In this lecture, we're going to study the often misunderstood mark of punctuation, the apostrophe. Let's start with an introductory project. You're the kind of person who believes he's going to be a big success without doing any hard work, but the world doesn't work that way. What's the purpose of the apostrophe in your, he's, and doesn't? Look at the sentence carefully. Your is a representation of you are. He's is a representation of he is. And doesn't is a representation of does not. So, what is going on here with the apostrophe? In each of these words, the apostrophe is indicating an omission of one or more letters. All right, let's look at another example here. The eagle's nest, Fred's feet, my mother's briefcase. What is the purpose of the apostrophe S in the above? In each case, we have a possession. The nest of the eagle, the feet of Fred, the briefcase of my mother. So we indicate possession by putting an apostrophe S. And one last example. The piles of old books in the attic were starting to decay. One book's spine had been gnawed away by the mice. Why does the second sentence have an apostrophe S, but the first books does not? If we look at the sentence, books in the first sentence is a simple plural. It's the object of the preposition of. And the second sentence, books with an apostrophe S, is a possessive describing the spine, the book's spine. So that needs an apostrophe S. So what is an apostrophe? An apostrophe, as we saw from the introductory project, serves two main purposes. It is used to note when letters are omitted, for example, in a contraction, and it is used to indicate possession. There are also some limited cases where apostrophes are used to build plurals of some words and letters, and we will look at some examples of those in another lecture. So one of the common uses of an apostrophe is for contractions, used to combine words. So here we have some examples, some of the more common contractions. Don't representing do not, doesn't representing does not, there representing there are, it's representing it is or it has, who's representing who is, I've representing I have, won't representing will not. Notice that that's irregular. O'clock representing of the clock. And then the last one here is can't, which represents cannot. The thing I want to point out here, because this is a common spelling error, note that cannot is not a combining of two words. Cannot is one word, and the contraction can't is actually deleting the letters N and the letter no. So as we've noted, the apostrophe is used when we have an omission of letters to form a contraction. The apostrophe is placed where the letters are missing. Now, a couple notes here. When should we use a contraction? Contractions are used to record conversation. They're used to record the way that we speak in English. We tend to speak in English using contractions. It's an informal way of writing, of speaking English. Contractions should not be used in academic writing unless we're directly quoting somebody. There are in English a couple or a few problem contractions because of homonyms, words that sound the same but are pronounced differently. So one of the common problem contractions is they are contracted into their, which also sounds like the possessive there. It's a contraction of it is or it has, compared with the possessive pronoun its. Your, the contraction of you are, versus the possessive pronoun your. Whose, a contraction of who is, versus the possessive interrogative or the possessive of who in whose. So, these are something that you have to study and make sure that you fully understand. Some examples here might help. They're not happy with their dinner. In the first, they are not happy with their dinner. They're referring back to they. It's obvious that the car needs its engine tuned. It is obvious that the car needs its engine. It refers back to car. Possessive pronoun. Who's the person whose horn is honking? Who is the person whose refers back to person, and it's the possessive, the person's horn. You're getting better with your grammar. Here again, you are is the subject, it's contraction, and your is the possessive pointing back to you. And finally, we have a few less common uses of an apostrophe for an omission. The first is using an apostrophe to indicate slang or dialect. For example, I'm getting tired or I'm going to bed. In this example, getting is slang, and the apostrophe at the end of the word indicates that the person speaking dropped the final G. Instead of saying I'm getting, it's that the person said I'm getting. Or I'm going. Instead of saying I am going, we say I'm going. You say I'm going. And then note here the T apostrophe indicates that instead of saying I'm going to bed, we often in slang will drop that to sound and make a schwa sound, or even totally swallow the vowel sound to bed altogether. So I'm going to bed. I'm going to bed. I'm going to bed. If I were to speak that way, saying I'm going to bed, and you were trying to record my speech, you would write it this way with an apostrophe after going and an apostrophe after the T. Another common usage of the apostrophe to indicate omission is when we're abbreviating dates. For example, I got married in 87. This, of course, the date really means 1987, but people often informally will indicate the year by an apostrophe before the date, indicating again the omission of the century. So I got married in 87 instead of I got married in 1987, or I got divorced in 88 instead of saying I got divorced in 1988. The point here is that there's nothing wrong with using the entire date. The abbreviation makes sense in speech because if I say 87 instead of 1987, I save two syllables. But in writing, I only save one character, which is hardly worth the trouble. So the point here is that in both cases, both with slang and also with abbreviating dates, it's absolutely fine to use these to record conversations. It's also absolutely fine to use these in creative writing, but they should definitely be avoided when you're writing academic writing.